Alright everyone, welcome. This is another episode of M3UCH's Modding Camp. Today we're going to be covering Lesson 4, an Intro to 3D Modeling. I am your host, Jack Murphy, also known as Surge on most forums and online. So, yeah, anyway, let's get started. Again, this is going to be sort of an introduction. You won't be getting your models into the source engine within this lesson, but it's still a good beginner's course, crash course, if you have no familiarity with modeling. Alright, let's see here. We are going to be using our program called Autodesk Softimage Softimage ModTool 7.5. There's a free download. The link is in the description. Let's see here. I don't have too many visuals today. I think mostly what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work inside of Softimage and just show you examples and try to explain the basic concepts and terminology of 3D modeling. We'll do a brief introduction to Softimage as a program itself, kind of show you the different viewports, the tools, the menus, stuff like that, how to navigate, how to manage your files, and how to get started. And then I'll just briefly go over how to, or some very useful modeling techniques that'll get you started. And then after that, maybe just reference you to the Source SDK docs, because that place is wonderful. I've mentioned it before. They also have great Softimage XSI tutorials, and I'm sure Softimage XSI, the mod tool is XSI is a very widely, or it's seen in the 3D modeling and animating world all over the place. A lot of people use it. Valve, uses it primarily, and a lot of animation companies. So lots of people use Softimage XSI, and so there's lots of references out there. There's lots of forums where you can meet other people and ask questions. There's lots of online tutorials, so you can learn the steps through text if you don't, if you weren't able to grasp everything right away. Again, this lesson isn't about how to model, but more about what modeling is, and basically teaches you how to use the tools. After that, you're free to just play with those tools as you wish and get to learn how they work. So, let's get into it here. I will start off by bringing up Softimage. Here we go. Here it is, with a big chat window over everything. There we go. Let's shrink that down a little. There you go. Looks good. That should be about fine for what we need. Okay, so here's Softimage. I am currently running this on my laptop screen, which has kind of a low resolution, so I can't exactly show you everything at once. I have to kind of collapse some of these menus so that you can see the menus underneath them. But it's okay, we only basically need these first two, select and transform. We'll go over those later. In the meantime, I'll like to start off with sort of explaining what 3D modeling is and why you should care about it. So yeah, I guess this poses the first question: why model? Models are able to contain lots of detail and are also very flexible on budget. So many things in a map are models. Maybe a good idea would be to bring up Model Viewer, just to give you an idea while I'm talking anyway. So here we go. They're able to, when I say they're able to contain a lot of detail, as you know, if you've worked with Hammer, you'll know that brushes aren't exactly the easiest thing to work with. They usually have to be at right angles, and when you start when you start rotating them and making them odd shapes, they start breaking really easily, and you can only get so detailed. If you lower the grid all the way down to the smallest it can get, you can add lots of detail, but not too much detail. Like, I remember when I was younger and first getting into modding, I wanted to make a police car and everything, and I know I really like the Black Mesa models, like the security cars in Black Mesa, and I always thought those were made out of brushes, so I tried making my own police car out of brushes, and it came out ugly. So yeah, if you want to have lots of control over the detail and I guess the textures, and if you want to create animations, you want to have models. So anything that's going to be a detail in your map, whether it be like a storm drain attached to a wall, a door frame itself, let's see, you know, just yeah, anything, small rocks on the ground, some stray bricks or something, anything that's too small to really create accurate detail, you want to create with models. Again, hammers used to sort of build the stage of your map, and then your models, 3D models, are going to be the props that are going to decorate and flush out your map. So anyway, I have this open here just so I can show you some of the random stuff they have, like props, City 17. As you can see here, they just have models for just about anything you can think of. Some awnings, bench, just a stray suitcase laying on the ground, Gibbs, random chairs, electrical equipment. All this is pretty familiar to anyone who's played Gary's mod. You see, yeah, they just, anything, like these utility boxes on the wall, something small. It has absolutely nothing to do with the gameplay, but, you know, it adds atmosphere. And, you know, they put a lot of detail into this. It's really nice, and you know, this is something that you could not make with brushes. You could, but it would be a nightmare, and not only that, but it would also be very bad for your map. It'd run very slow, very poorly. So anyway, models are great. You just create one time, and you can use it anywhere, as many times as you want. And not only that, but it's also very flexible. There's a thing we'll go into later called level of detail. Not a lot of people know this about models, but what makes models so nice is that when you're really close to them, they look really nice and detailed. But when you get further away, let's see if this one has some. Yeah, it has a couple LODs, which means level of detail. As you get further away, the level of detail gets turned down, and it gets super basic. Like here, you can see how simple this is compared to that. I'll switch back and forth a couple more times. There you go. You may. So yeah, that's called low level of detail. So basically what happens is when the player's far away from an object, they don't need to see all the small details like this. So the game automatically, well, not automatically, you have to set it up yourself, but the game handles switching from a high resolution model like this with lots of detail to a low one. So that way it's easier for the computer to process, and it keeps your game so you're able to have lots of detail in your map and things look really good without sacrificing your frame rate. So again, models are awesome. They contain, and again, they contain animation and lots of detail. They can be lit dynamically. Like here, I'll move the light around the map, and you can see it change. Whereas things that you make in Hammer, they have to have a static light, which means the lighting never changes. Whereas models, the lighting can change on them. So models are used for so many things. That is why you should model. Now that we got that out of the way, and I'm sure you're all psyched. I mean, you're watching the video after all. Let's start getting into the basic terms of modeling. The first thing we should start off with is a little kind of a more of a math term here, polygon. Or I guess it could also be considered art. But anyway, yeah, a polygon. You may have heard about this before, polygon count or polygon mesh, stuff like that. Polygons are basically any shape that is made up of sides. And the most simple of shapes, you know, a shape would be like a square, octagon, you know, trapezoid, stuff like that. It's a shape made out of sides. Although the most simple shape of them all, oh yeah, don't mind all this exactly, is the triangle. Again, I'm going to do some stuff here in Softimage that may not make sense right away, but I'm going to explain how I'm doing all this stuff later. So just, I'm going to use Softimage as a visualization for now. The most simple shape of all is a triangle. It has 3 sides. It's the smallest, it's the simplest polygon we can make. If we make a square, that'll be 4 sides. And anyway, what I'm saying is the reason we work with triangles is because they're the easiest way for the computer to render 3D. I'm not going to get into the details on how a computer takes 3D data and renders it into what we see in-game as a 3D image, just because that's super technical, and honestly I don't think I even understand all of it completely. But what you do need to know is that triangles are the building blocks of everything 3D. Like here, I'll load up a recent project here. Let's see. I'm currently working on a map for Sunshine Forest. That's sort of secret right now, but I'll let it out of the bag for you guys. Let me go to... There we go. Here is an old dead tree trunk from Sunshine Forest. And as you can see, it's made up of a ton of different triangles. There's not one square on here, or at least there shouldn't be. I see a couple up there, but that's not too important. Over here is a good example. There's no triangles. There's a square there too. Anyway, that doesn't exactly matter, because this square, even though it looks like a square, is actually made up of triangles. It's just they're not shown right now. I can easily show them to you, so boom, there. Split it. So there. Now that square is now made of two triangles. That's basically how 3D modeling works. Everything is made out of these triangles, or polygons. And here, everything has what's called a polygon count. That shows like this high-res version of the tree model right here has 3,340 triangles in it. It sounds like a lot, but nowadays that's actually kind of typical for just a standard prop laying around. And again, using level of detail, I can later on put it in the game, and when the player's far away from it, it'll become more simple. So, anyway, and have therefore less triangles, and it'll be easier for the computer to render. Anyway, let's get back to a clean slate here. Those are polygons, and when lots of polygons are together like that, they're called a polygon mesh. You may have heard that before too. Not only that, I should probably not have gone out of the tree right away, but there's a thing called normals. Normals are a property of polygons. Normals explain what direction the polygons are facing. Now, polygons seem like they're solid plates, kind of like tiles or pieces of paper. Like, it almost looks like a... oh man, what's it called? Origami or something. But you kind of have to learn that... one moment. Yeah, you just kind of have to learn that polygons don't... they can't be seen from all sides. Like, when I look up like this, I can see the polygons underneath the tree. Whereas... here, let me show you what this tree looks like in Model Viewer. So anyway, here's the tree once it was put into the engine really quick. There we go. Obviously it needs to be textured, it just has a simple thing right now. I'm going to put a better texture on it later. But if I look up at the tree, whoa, what's that? Why is it invisible? It's because polygons can only have one side. You can't see them from both sides at the same time, or you can't see the polygons from the outside and the inside. If you try looking at a polygon from behind, it's invisible. So what normals are is here. I'll turn them on. Normals. These little blue. You can't really see them that well in Model Viewer. I'll show you in Softimage. It'll be a lot easier to see. I'll turn on normals here. There we go. This little like blue hair stuff that seems to be coming out of the model. Those lines basically show which way the polygons are facing. Right now they're all facing outwards towards us, which is good. Which means that when we view this model or this model in game, it'll look correctly. Whereas here I can invert them. Invert polygons. There, now they're all facing inward. All those blue lines, the normals, are facing inward. So let me turn on 3D here for a second. There, now it's all black and looks weird. So see, if I look under it, now I can see it. But if I put this in game, it's going to look really weird. It's basically turned inside out. So what I'm going to do again is I'm just going to invert the polygons so that way they're pointing outwards again. There, and now it lights correctly. So polygons and normals go hand in hand, just so you know what they are. Polygons, again, are shapes made of just made of sides, and triangles are the smallest polygon you can make. And because of that, they're what the computer uses. So, anyway, but again, even if you have more complex shapes like pentagons or hexagons, whatever, or square, they're going to be divided up into triangles. Even if you don't exactly see them as triangles, that's how the computer sees them, and that's what you should be working with. All right, let's see what else. A polygon is also made up of what's called points. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a... Okay, here we go. So here's a polygon, 6-sided, has, like I said, you can't see it, but this is made up of triangles, like that. I'm just doing this to show you. So anyway, here we are, and each of these polygons are made up of what's called points. Points are these individual floating dots. They don't have any weight to them, like they don't have mass, they aren't solid, they aren't something tangible, they're more something abstract. The dots, these points, just define the shape of the polygons that we're going to use. And last but not least, there are edges. When two points are connected to each other, they create an edge. There we go. If it's a yellow edge, it means that it's more like a seam. It's which is hard to explain. Let me see here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this part of the cube. There, now these edges are blue, but these blue edges mean that they're boundaries. They mean that this is the very edge of your model, the very edge of your polygon. So those are kind of important to know. Yellow means that these are edges that divide, and blue are edges that just drop off. They're edges, they're cliffs, basically. There's nothing on the other side of these lines. Again, that they aren't entirely important for what we're doing right now, but later on when you're modeling, if you ever run into problems like you don't understand why something seems broken with your model, chances are you may, you can use the edges and the yellow and blue to kind of help find where you may have missing parts, stuff like that. And that's more advanced. We'll move on from that. I'm just basically, again, going over the terminology of modeling here. Modeling also highly relies on being, being proficient with working within 3D space. If you've worked with Hammer, you have some good experience getting started with 3D space, but you aren't exactly ready yet. So I'm just going to kind of go over the basics of 3D space here. What is 3D space? How do you work inside of it? And we'll just go from there. So yeah, anyway, 3D space, we're looking at it. Right here, we have, okay, again, this is going to seem sort of simple to some people, but again, I feel like I have to go over it. We're going to start off with talking about one-dimensional. What does one dimension mean? When 2 points connect to make an edge, that edge exists inside one dimension. So here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a one-dimensional line. There we go. We're looking at this line here. All it exists is in this one direction. There's no depth, there's no height, there's only one dimension, width. And if I were to happen to look at it from a different view, all that would be height with no width. There's only one dimension that exists for this line. A good example of one dimension would be like a timeline, whereas on the far left would be early in the timeline, and far right would be late in the timeline, like maybe baby and elderly. So if you work out that, prehistoric times, modern times, that's one dimension. 2 dimensions is when you have at least 2 lines merged together. So one moment here, let me modify this a bit. So this one line we have, I'm going to, one moment. Yeah, okay, here we go. Not a perfect one, but whatever. So there we are. Now we have two. They aren't exactly joined right now, I know, but let's see. Curve. Anyway, this is just for the sake of explaining things. It doesn't need to look perfect right now. We have not only left to right width, but we also have height in the same thing. So this is 2 dimensions. Also, if I were to go ahead and create a shape, this is 2 dimensions. There we go. It has width and height, but has no depth. It's completely flat. A good example of this would be maybe a graph, whereas left to right would be time still, and up and down would maybe be height. So if, like, we were using an example here, one moment. Yeah, sort of like, okay, so anyway, 2 dimensions. Which basically 2 dimensions means 2 directions. Width and height. Left and right, up and down. So 2D, this is what a lot of us are familiar with, and it's easy to wrap our heads around. This is how we draw when we write on pieces of paper and stuff. And now, getting into 3D. We have these 2 dimensions, width, height, and now the 3rd dimension is depth. One moment. Boom. There we go. So now we have 3D. Not only is it defined with width and height of an object, but also how deep it is. So there we are, 3D. This height, width, and depth are also known in 3D modeling as X, Y, and Z. We can see down here in the bottom left of this viewport, you know, here, let me, yeah. The bottom left here of this viewport, we see these little X, Y, and Z's. This is sort of a visual representation of these locations, of these directions in space. Let me go ahead, I'm going to bring our grid back here. As we can see down here, Z is this direction and X is this way. And Y is the height, altitude. We can't see that here. But anyway, when working in 2 dimensions, 2 dimensions by themselves are what's called a plane. Think of a plane as a flat surface. A good example of a plane would be a floor. This grid here is a plane. The plane, if I look at it straight on, is made of, if we look at our visual representation here, X is going left and right, and Z is going up and down. So this plane, as we call it, is made up of X and Z. So this is an X and Z plane, or a top view. So this is again a flat surface. There's no 3rd dimension here. There's no depth. There's no altitude. Think of this again as a floor. When you walk around a room, you walk left and right around the room and up and down through the room, or back and forth. You could also think of this as a wall. Let me go ahead and I'll start getting some 3D objects on here. Here we go. This would be our floor. It's 2D. It has width and height, or width and length, whatever you want to think about it. So this is a wall. It could be considered a plane. And I'll rotate it so it's vertical now. And now a wall is also considered a plane. It's just a flat surface. When you look at it straight on, it looks completely flat. This one is made up of Z going left to right and Y going up and down. And then again, I can rotate it this way. It's still a wall, but now it's made up of X and Y. X being left and right, and Y being up and down. Again, those are sort of what's called planes. If it seemed a little confusing, don't worry about it. You don't really need to think about planes too much. They just kind of become second nature after a while of working with them. But when I return to these viewports, the top viewport, front, right, these are all things that are familiar to you if you've used Hammer. All these viewports are planes. As you can see here, top is X and Z, front is Y and X, and right is Y and Z. again, I'm just kind of doing this to go over the terminology. They aren't that understanding planes isn't exactly important. Again, it's something that'll sort of grow on you after a while. Let's see here. So I think that's pretty much it. I'm just going to go over my notes here really quick. I think we've covered 3D space fairly well. Yeah, good. So anyway, here we go. I guess one more thing I should just... well, nah, that's good. Okay, so now I guess we're going to kind of get into Softimage proper. You've seen me messing around with it. I haven't really explained how I've done anything. So again, don't worry about it. I'm going to get into that here in a second. I'm going to start off here with describing how Softimage handles files, how you'll manage your work. As you know, with Microsoft Word, it's called Word documents. If you open up Photoshop, they're called Photoshop files. With Autodesk or Softimage, they're called what's called scenes. Because really, what a lot of 3D modeling programs are used for is for animation, creating 3D animated movies and stuff like that. And like when you're shooting a movie with a real-life camera, you'd call that a scene, setting up a scene. Whereas, so 3D modeling uses that word scene in the same sense. When you're going to set up a shot for a render or a 3D film, the scene that you want is going to be the name of your... That's sort of where the file name comes from, scenes. Scenes are stored inside what's called projects, and not only scenes, but lots of things. You can store textures, reference photos, stuff like that. But since we're going to be modeling for the sake of games, making game content, specifically the source engine, we aren't really going to use a lot of what the project system has to offer. When I say project system, I mean like when I said you have to make a new project in Softimage. Let me open that up before I continue. It's called Project Manager. You reach it under File, and then right there, Project Manager. This is what it looks like. So anyway, it's a very good, easy way to organize your work. Like right now, I see I have a Sunshine Forest project, which right now only has Giant Tree because I just started working on that. But then here we are, Millennial Fair, Newport City, a lot of things I worked on. I still have saved. So I'm just gonna open up one, and boom! It's super easy for me to go ahead and get back and find projects I had worked on and start on new ones. Project Manager. Again, I'm going to open that up again. So let's talk about how to create a new project. Right here, it's fairly obvious, new project. Now, depending on where you save Softimage, mine is located right on the C drive. But anyway, I don't think it installs it itself. Here's where I do it. Inside the Softimage, so here we are, hard drive. I open up Softimage, and then I don't think this project folder exists when you first install Softimage. I made it myself. So you can do that if you want. If you want to make your project somewhere else on your computer, go ahead. Just, find some place that you want to store all your projects. And then, yeah, there you go, projects. You just create this folder called projects. And then what you do is you just select the folder. Select projects and hit select. So now right here it says the location will be inside your folder. Like again, it doesn't need to be inside Softimage, just as long as it's inside the projects folder. And then you give the project a name. So I'll give it Modding Camp. Okay, hold on. Add project to the list. This project is not part of your project list. Do you want to add it? Well, that's kind of weird. It says it's not part of my project list, but it's right there. I'm going to say no for now. Anyway, let's see. Modding Camp. There we are. Modding Camp. So here we are. Now we can have select scene, new scene. Nope, don't save changes. Okay. And now here we are. We have a new scene. It's completely blank. File, and then we can save as. And we'll save it as, let's say, a first model. Okay, there we go. So now when I go back to the project manager, You know, here we are, we're at different projects and stuff. And then if I go modding camp, there we are, first model. So we can easily get back to it. And again, if you want to start over on a new project, click new scene, and there you go. So anyway, again, on the left here is your project list of all your different projects. And then on the right is all the files or scenes inside this project. So it's kind of a good idea to name the project after your map, and then name each individual scene after the different models that you're going to be making. So again, I'm going to stick with this whole first model deal here. I said that we don't need to necessarily use all the different features that the project manager gives us. I'll give you an example here. I'm going to open up the project thing, or the project folder inside a actual Explorer here. So here's what it looks like. Hard drive, Softimage, projects. So when I open up modding camp, aside from making it, it created all these different folders: actions, audio, backup, composites, .xsi, expressions, f-curves, models, pictures, queries. So anyway, there's all this stuff here. This is all important stuff, but then again, it applies to 3D modeling and animating as a whole. So we're making models for games. We aren't making models for architecture or like CG movies, stuff like that. So a lot of these aren't going to be used by us. The main thing we're going to use right here is just scenes. I mean, I guess pictures is something handy that you could use. Like I said, if you have reference photos, like if you're going to be modeling yourself or like as a character, which would be really advanced, but you know, go for it. So you have reference photos of yourself that a friend took or something, and you need to use those pictures as a reference. Maybe this is a good place to store them. They're easy to find, keeps everything organized. But the scenes folder is where all your actual things are going to be. First model. I never say that. Okay, it looks like .exp. Never mind. But first model. So there we go. That's where all your scenes are going to be saved. So again, if I go File, Save As, it automatically defaults to the scene folder inside of your project. So if you ever get lost, you know, that's how if you need to navigate your way back, that's where you need to save to. You need to save it inside your projects folder, modding camp or whatever, you know, project you're working on, and then save it inside the scenes folder. If you save it anywhere else, it's not going to appear in the project manager when you try and open it. So anyway, that's a project manager, and those are scenes basically. So here we go. The next thing to sort of introduce is what's called the workflow modules on the left. Again, Softimage is a very versatile program, and it's made for lots of different people. It's made for game designers and film. It's made for modelers. It's made for animators. It's made for art, like 2D artists, 3D artists. And basically what it does is it allows itself to have different modes. And these are called modules. And they're for the different sort of workflows. The first one is model. So that'd be the very first thing you do with a model, with a 3D model, is you'd make the geometry. You'd make the shape of it. You use the number keys up at the top of your keyboard, 1, 2, and 3, to switch between them. 1 is model, 2 is animate. So this is more for like when creating skeletons and animations. 3 is render. This is more for doing like texture work and creating the way it looks. There is a fourth one. Wait, no. Yeah, there's a fourth one. 4, simulate. This is like if you want to create an object that's going to explode or have a brick wall that's going to crumble and you don't want to animate it all. You simulate is a way to where you can start simulating those things for you, so you don't have to animate it. I haven't really experimented around with that yet, just because it's, I assume, kind of advanced, and I don't have any need for it right now. There is a fifth one called hair. We're never going to use that. Hair is definitely something made specifically for CG computer-rendered movies. And hair does not work in video games, so we're not going to, or at least Softimage hair does not work in games, so this is something you'll never have to use. So anyway, we'll go back to model here. This is the basic one. I hardly ever move off of model. Almost everything you can do. And as you saw, these tools change as I go to different modules here. The models or the modules, hold on a minute, excuse me. Okay, much better. These modules, as you can see, the tools change. very slightly. There's some that stay the same, primitive material property. Those basically stay the same no matter what module I'm on. So anyway, the modules are separated into 3 steps, or 3 different ways in which you can work. You can get things, create things, or modify things. Get basically means that you're using, you're going to create objects that were already made by someone else. They were made ahead of time. These are simple things like cubes, triangles, spheres, toruses, that sort of thing. So these things, get is a good place to start. They'll help you get a very, let me just check my notes here, make sure I'm not going off the path here. Okay, yeah, good. I'm right on track. So this is a good place to start. If you want to create something like, let's say, a boombox that has a relatively, rectangle-ish or square shape, rather than creating that square from scratch, you can just go to get, and you can get a square or a cube to start with, and then you can modify it from there. Create is if you want to have more control over what you're creating. So this is a way to make things specifically from shapes and everything. Like here, I'm not exactly going to explain it really quick, but I'm just going to show you what I mean. Using what's called curves, I can go ahead and make a really quick cup. Doo-doo-doo. There we go. So, sorry if that blew some people's minds, but it's inside out. I got to invert the polygons so that way the normals face the right direction. Again, I'll explain all this in future lessons, but basically what I was able to do is I made a little glass here, and obviously a glass is a very complex shape, or at least it's a lot more complex than a simple cube or something. So, again, I use tools from Create here on the left to create very specific shapes. So again, get, just to reiterate, get is to make very primitive shapes, very simple shapes to start with, and create is when you have something more detailed in mind. And modify is for tweaking things that when you already have a 3D object or something that you're working with and you want to fine-tune it or you want to modify it in a certain way. This is what modify is. So, like, here's an example. Let's see. I will create a cube really quick. And let's say I want to have lots of detail on here. I want to have lots of lines. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select all these edges. Again, I'm going to explain how to select and all that stuff later. And I'll go down to Modify Polygon Mesh, because that's what it is. It's a polygon mesh. And I'm going to do Subdivide Polygons and Edges. So what this does... Okay. Weird. Okay, I'm wondering why it's not working. Maybe it's the wrong one. Let's see here. Subdivide polygons, edges. Okay, there we go. So what this does is it divides it up. So now one edge gets cut in half and becomes 2, or one polygon gets divided up into 2. And the more I crank up the power, boom, it starts cutting those polygons in half. It cuts those polygons in half. It just becomes more detailed. So again, modify here is how to tweak things that already exist. Whereas the first two, get and create, is to sort of make things come into existence. So, anyway, let's get started. You saw me do a couple things here, like how to create objects. So I'm going to teach you how to do that. It's we'll start off with get. We're going to start with something very simple. We're going to just create a cube. I did it before, you saw me do it, but again, I kind of rushed through it, I didn't really explain it. So I'm going to go through it here step by step. Get primitive, and here we have all of our different types of primitives. There's curves, polygon mesh, the surface, all this different stuff. I'll go into this later. Like I said, polygon mesh is what video games use. It's what computers use. Yeah, it's what video games use to render or build 3D models, polygon meshes. So that we're going to want to work with polygon meshes. If we work with anything else like a surface, A surface is very, like here, I'll show you the difference. A polygon mesh of a sphere versus a polygon, or versus a surface mesh of a sphere. It's much smoother and looks a lot nicer compared to the polygon one. It looks almost too smooth. It looks perfect. Whereas the polygon mesh, it looks, you know, you can see the corners and stuff like that. It's nice and smooth. Surfaces are very nice, are very smooth, and they're very good for things like maybe if you worked at a car company and you were designing Ferraris and stuff, and you wanted to create 3D mock-ups of what the Ferrari would look like, so that way you can convince your boss to start making it. You'd use surface meshes, so that way it looks super smooth, looks really good. But the thing is, surface meshes, the reason they're so smooth is because they are drawn using mathematical equations for curves. And those mathematical equations are a lot harder for the computer to think about than polygons. So surface meshes look nice, but again, they aren't good for game production. So we are going to go ahead and do, if anyone's following along, get primitive polygon mesh, and we're just going to do a simple cube to start with. And there you go. What happened is this cube was designed by someone at Softimage when they made this. They just basically set up the parameters, or they defined what a cube is, and they just stored it in memory. So when you do get polygon cube, it pulls that cube out of memory and it drops it into your scene here. Hooray. This is the property window. I don't want to go into this too much because Softimage has a really useful and very dynamic way of sort of like a relationship chart where you can very easily tie different things together. Like you can change, you can tie different properties to different things. Like if you wanted to, it's kind of hard to explain. You can tie, geez, yeah, where to begin? This really wasn't part of my class notes, so maybe I shouldn't get into this. But you can add relationships to other objects, and like this, I won't get into it. But anyway, this is the property sheet. Just think of it as the same sort of property window that an entity would have in Hammer, where you can choose like the light brightness, the light color. Whereas since this is a polygon mesh, you can choose the length of each side. So if I increase this, the cube gets bigger and smaller. I wouldn't mess with that because I'm going to explain how to manipulate things in a second, and manipulating things through the property manager isn't really a good idea. This is sort of a good starting size. So I'd maybe adjust the length only once, and this is only when you first create it. So just make it as big or as small as you want, and then don't ever touch this again. We'll do the rest of it with different tools. Subdivision rule, this isn't stuff we're going to be dealing with. Although I will show you, well, actually, yeah. Subdivisions are the detail of an object. So here, I'll show you what happens. If I turn up U, this side of the cube has a ton more detail in it. And then V goes in that direction. And base. Last one. If you may notice, there's 3 of these, U, V, and base. 3 of them, 3 is the magic number, X, Y, Z, 3 of those. U goes in one direction. As we can see, it goes this way, left to right, and if we look down here, we see that Z is our left to right. So U is in the Z axis, or Z direction. Whenever I say axis, I mean a direction in 3D space. X, Y, or Z. X, Y, or Z are also called axes. So anyway, left to right is the Z axis. And that it also associates with the U coordinates, or the U subdivision. V also goes left to right, but it is going this direction. So this is on the X plane, or the X coordinate. And last but not least, we've done X, Z, and now there's Y, which is up and down, which is base. So anyway, as you can see, each one goes in a different direction in space, in 3D space. Another way to think about U and V coordinates is also as like latitude and longitude on a map. As you know, latitude, I believe, it's been a while since I've done this. I think latitude is left to right. So I think this would be considered, if this was a globe, Actually, no, yeah, let's start off with a sphere to show, just to sort of demonstrate latitude and longitude. So here we are. I crank up U, and and you get more of these lines that go up and down. Here, I'm going to turn this down so it's more defined. So yeah, the lines going from top to bottom increase. These lines that go from the top of the sphere to the bottom of the sphere, I believe was called longitude. Because I think I remember that because longe sounds like long, and I always thought it was longer top to bottom. You know what, I'm going to look like an idiot, so I'm going to look it up right now. Longitude. Images for longitude. Yep. Was I right? I think so. Let's see. Yes. Look at that. Suck it. Longitude up and down, latitude left to right. Okay, anyway, I still got it. So, longitude, again, up and down. And V would be latitude, which are the poles or the lines that wrap around the Earth. So the more I crank this up, the more lines we have, therefore the more detail. So anyway, that's sort of how U and V work. That's a way to think about it. Think about it as longitude and latitude. One goes up and down, one goes left and right. And then again, for some objects like our cube, we also have base. So anyway, let's get back to our cube, shall we? So again, we can crank these, we can change this depending on how much detail we want to have on our cube. Right now I'm going to keep it 1, 1, 1, 1, so that way it's very simple. There's not too much I can do with this anymore, so I'm going to close out of this property manager. Again, I'm not really going to go into property managers and how Softimage handles object relationships, stuff like that. So I'm just going to stick with this for now. We have our simple cube. Okay. Next thing I should start introducing is the viewports. I've been flying around and viewing these objects in multiple different views, and I've been expanding windows, and I haven't really been explaining it yet. So I'm going to explain that right now. Again, if you've worked with Hammer, you understand top, front, right, and camera. Again, you can click up here, up at the name, and you can choose what type of view you want. Right now it's a top view. If I want, I can make it a front view, I can make it a right view. I'm going to keep it as top. I can also go to cameras, and I can have it set from a camera view, so I can have two viewports. I can have two 3D things, so I can view it from multiple angles at the same time. Wait, no, I can't. Well, yeah, I can, but I'm not going to go into that just yet. I'm going to set that back to top. And then in the 3D view here, you can, or on the right side of the viewport window, you see this thing. This is wireframe. This is how you can render it. There's wireframe, there's depth queue. Actually, no, this is probably best to show in the 3D view. Wireframe, whereas it's not solid. All you can see are the edges. There's depth queue, where it sort of adds a fog to the map, so that way lines that are really bright white are close to you, and the lines that are darker are further away from you. So it's a way to like look at wireframe view while still having a sense of depth, where you can tell what's close and what's far away. Because when you work in wireframe mode, sometimes it's kind of hard to tell which line is which. Because I mean, look at that. You know, which line's close, which line's far away. It's kind of hard to tell. You put on depth queue, boom, there you go. It's really easy to figure out. Hidden line removal is basically, it kind of gives the illusion of it being solid. Just if there's any lines or edges that are being hidden by polygons, they won't be drawn. It'll be removed. This is still technically wireframe view, just it looks solid because we don't have the lines being drawn on top of it. So again, hidden line removal. Constant, I really don't know what this is used for ever. It's just, it gives it a constant shape, like color and brightness. Makes it kind of hard to tell the detail. I guess it could be used in some circumstances. But anyway, shaded. This is where it, oh yeah, let me turn off headlight here. Shaded is where you actually get, this is actual 3D. This isn't wireframe. This is actual solidness. It has lighting effects. Like here, I'll turn on hidden line removal. There we go. Let's see here. So yeah, shaded. Shaded means that it actually is affected by light. Now, when I was turning on headlight here, under this shaded, you can see headlight here is one of your options. What that basically means is right now we have a light. You can't really see it, it's hidden right now, but there is a light source in this scene right now that's illuminating this object. It's obviously coming from this direction because this side of the cube is all dark. When we're modeling with things, like I'll bring, well maybe, let's say I'll just use my tree as an example, that when I want to work on something that's complicated, if I want to work on the back side of this cube, and I want to see how it's looking, it's going to be hard to tell how it looks if it's all black and I can't really see. So turning on headlight basically means all the lights in your scene get turned off and there's only one light and it's emitted from your camera. So no matter what angle I look at it from, there's always going to be light shining on it from the angle I'm looking at it. My camera has a flashlight on it basically. So I find turning on the headlight option is very good for modeling because no matter what angle you look at your model from, you'll be able to see the detail. And not only that, but also you can see the lighting change. And it gives you a good sense of the 3D and the shape of your object. And then there's textured. If we had textures on this, you'd be able to see the textures on this as well. Texture decal, I'm not really sure what that is. Real-time shaders. This is, if you have any problems, like if shaded doesn't work for you, like my laptop doesn't have a dedicated graphics card, and sometimes shaded doesn't work too well, so I have to go down the real-time shaders and OpenGL. What that does is this basically uses a really advanced technology, I suppose, to render your object. Shaded is a very simple way of doing it. It's like Softimage's version, whereas OpenGL and DirectX, these are things from big name. These are from companies that all they do is 3D. They live and breathe 3D, so they know all about rendering. So again, if you have any problems seeing your object in 3D, I'm kind of going into too much detail here. The basic gist of it is if you have any problems seeing your object in 3D, try real-time shaders. That'll help you. Anyway, now that we've discuss that, you can apply those different render options to any of these views. So front, I can set that to shaded, and I can turn on headlight as well. But for these top front and right views, these 2D views, it's best to just keep it on wireframe. So anyway, there we go, there are the viewports, and that's how to change your rendering options. So now, here's one of the most important tools to use. I've been using it like crazy, and I haven't explained it yet, and I'm sure a lot of people who are following along are dying to learn how I'm doing this already, is how to move the camera. It was a very... I remember when I was first learning how to use Softimage, learning how to use the camera came later. Like, I won't say much later, but I remember it was very irritating not being able to look around my... my view around my scene. So again, cameras are very important. The main tool you'll use is the S or the S key. Most of the time whenever I model, I have my middle finger on my left middle finger resting on the S key. When you hold down the S key, that's basically your camera controls. You notice how the cursor changed. I hold down S and it changes. Now I can control the camera. Depending on what viewport you have your mouse in depends on what it'll do, or which view you'll change. Left click is to drag and slide the camera around. So if I left click and move my mouse, I move around, I slide. I don't go forward, I don't go backwards, I don't zoom in, I don't zoom out. I just move around, left and right. Whoa, what is happening? Okay, that was weird. There we go. This is what it's supposed to look like. And then if I hold S and right click, I can rotate. Basically, there's a point of origin. You can't see it. It's hidden right now. I'll unhide it really quick. Camera, root, unhide. Well, that's not right. Where's it? Camera interest. This little thing right here, that's what the camera is. That's what the camera is focused on. When I hold S and right click, that is what the camera rotates around. It doesn't rotate around the object or the center of the map. It rotates around this little thing here. And if I hold left click, it moves that around, and the camera follows it. So if I want to rotate around my object, I have to move this thing inside of it, and then I can rotate, and it rotates around that. A shortcut, this might be a little advanced, it wasn't really in my class notes, but I think it's kind of important, is when you have an object selected, again, I'll teach you how to select things later. If you hit F, stand for like frame, think of it that way, it frames the object. Whatever you have selected, it frames it in the middle of your shot, and therefore puts the middle of your camera's interest on it. So when I rotate around, I rotate just around my object. So if you ever get too sidetracked and you get lost and you're like, oh, I want to rotate around my object, but my camera focus is too far off. Hold on, let me hide it again. You know, you can't understand how and you're having too hard of a time trying to get yourself back over there. A good shortcut is to just select the object you want to rotate around and hit F. And boom, there. Now it's the center of your camera. Your camera focuses on that. So anyway, again, that was that. Wasn't really part of my class notes about the camera focus, but I think it's kind of important. And not only that, aside from panning, rotating, or like sliding the camera around with left click and rotating with right click, you can also move the camera forward and backwards by either using the mouse wheel or clicking the mouse wheel in and then dragging your mouse for fine-tuning. So that's how you move forward, move backwards is with the mouse wheel, rotating with right click, and panning with left and right. Or left click, yeah. Left click is to pan left and right. So anyway, that's how you move around in 3D. It's sort of the same applies to the 2D views. Hold down S, left click is to move around, pan. Mouse wheels to zoom in and out. The only thing that there isn't is you can't rotate. You can't right click because this is a 2D view and you can't rotate around this, or else it wouldn't be 2D anymore, it'd be 3D. So in the side views here, only left click and mouse wheel work. So anyway, that's how you navigate around your scene. Now that you have that, you know how to get an object from nothing, and you know how to then move around your scene and view it and navigate. So anyway, I guess let me just check my notes here. I think I know what it is. Okay, so next we're going to go into what's called the main control panel, or MCP. It's on the right here. No matter what view or no matter what flow chart or workflow model you're on, model, animate, render, simulate, no matter what one you're on, these are always going to remain the same. These are your main control panels. I'm not going to go into describing all of them right now, just because they are all very in-depth and detailed, and used for more advanced lessons later on. Right now I'm just going to show you the basics. Right now I explained how I was going to teach you how to select things. Well, here we go. This is the very first one on the top is the select module. This is sort of more a filter when you want to select specific things. Right now, if you hit spacebar, spacebar is going to be one of your best friends in 3D modeling. If you ever want to select something and you don't want to have to deal with the select menu here, just hit spacebar. Spacebar automatically defaults you back to the object selection tool. It selects anything. Let me see here. I'll draw a curve here. I haven't really explained what curves are, but those are for more advanced lessons here. But woo, I made a curve. Look at that. So let's say I want to select the curve, but not my object. If I just drag out a square here, click and drag to create a selection square, I select both. So if I only want to select curves, you see this little arrow down here? It brings up a list of all the different things I can select from. And right now, this is the curve filter. So if I have the selected curve, if I click and drag, all I'll select is curves. No matter how much I try and click on my cube, I can't select it. Whereas the curve, no problem. And vice versa. If I only want to select polygon meshes, but no curves, I select the polygon mesh. Whoop. So there, now when I click and drag, I only select the cube. But then again, if I want to go ahead and I want to select everything, hit spacebar, and it defaults back to the object selection. Oh, no it doesn't. Okay, never mind, that's kind of a pain. I thought it did. Strange. Anyway, disregard that. I guess you have to manually go up and select object. Object is anything. Everything in XSI is considered an object. So when you switch to the object option here, basically you'll be able to select anything. Let's get into, let's see. Okay, here we go. As you notice, when I have the polygon mesh selected, or the cube, new options appear: point, edge, and polygon. Again, those are the three things that build up a model that I told you about. Polygon are the shapes. Well, actually, points are the most basic. And edges are made from points that are connected. And then polygons are made from 3 or more edges. So here we can select the different things. If I select point here, I can click and drag and I can select the individual points. As you see, they turn red when they're selected. I choose edge, and boom, again, they turn red when selected. You can hold shift to add, and you can do control so you can toggle. So you can add to your selection, stuff like that. And last but not least, polygon. I can select faces. Oh, that's weird, it's not working. Anyway, I'm going to show you the shortcut keys. Shortcut keys will save you so much time in modeling. I can't stress how important shortcut keys are. I didn't think they were that important when I got started, but when I learned them, they sped things up immensely. Super helpful. The main ones you're going to use, and luckily they're all in the same location, is T, Y, or sorry, T, E, and U. T is point. If you hit T on your keyboard, the point selection works. So now you can select points. E is for edge. That one's self-explanatory. It switches to the edge selection tool. And U allows you to select polygons. Select the faces, as they're also called. Polygons, faces, they're the same thing. And, oh, I think this is where spacebar comes into use. When you're selecting things like points, edges, polygons, and you just want to get back to selecting the objects as a whole, then you hit spacebar. Then spacebar defaults to the object. Okay, that's the importance of spacebar. If you have a very specific filter like polygon mesh or curve, spacebar won't do it. You have to get off of that first before spacebar reverts to the object selector. So there you go. That's the selection module here. Not only that, but also it allows you to there's a lot more really important and very useful tools. If you if you click on the title here, select, you see this little arrow here on select, click that and it opens up a much more expansive menu of tools. I'll show you some of the more handy ones. One of them is grow selection. So I'll go ahead and I'll select this top polygon here, and I'll go to select and I'll do grow selection. What this will do is it'll select all the polygons that are next to that one. So it grew. This is super handy on more advanced models. Like here, I'll open up the tree model again as an example here. So if I go ahead, let me get it. It's on textured, like I said. I'm currently texturing it right now. It looks kind of ugly right now. Shaded, no textured. No, shaded. So here we go. I'll select this, and I'll hit U to go to my polygon selection tool, and I will select a polygon, and I'll do select, grow selection. See, now it selects every adjacent polygon to that. And here's a really neat trick with a Softimage that's super handy. If you middle click, if you click in the mouse button, what it'll do is if you middle click on an object, it'll redo the last thing you did, like the last option. So I did grow selection. There it goes. If I middle click, it'll do grow selection again. It'll automatically do it because grow selection was the last action I chose. So if I just left or middle click with the mouse wheel, it'll do it, woo, so I don't have to constantly keep going grow selection, grow selection, grow selection. I don't need to do that. I can just middle click on it, and it just spreads. So that's a useful tool later. I can't really explain why it's going to be useful, but I'm sure you'll understand later once you actually get your hands dirty and start modeling. Same thing, aside from polygons, it also works with points. If I select a point and do grow selection, it starts selecting points next to it, and edges as well. I'll select an edge, middle click, grow, grow, grow. So there you go. Another good one is invert selection using filter. So let's say I have these polygons selected, but I want everything selected but that. Select invert using filter. Our filter is polygons, and so it's going to invert it, so it's going to select all the polygons and it's going to deselect the ones we have selected. Boom. So now everything else is selected except for what we initially had, and I can middle click to invert it back, so it just switches between the two. Again, I can't really give you any examples of why that's important. Just as you model, you'll find your own reasons for wanting to use them. But just know that that's the select module here, and if you want to have some more interesting selection options, here you go. So that was selecting. But what good is selecting? I've explained how to. Again, we're going to kind of go back to our first model here. What good is selecting right now? Well, selecting is the first part of modifying objects. Oh yeah, something else I forgot to mention about viewports is using as how I was making them full screen like this. F12 is the shortcut key for it. You can also click this button up here. It basically makes this, whatever viewport you click on, it makes it full screen. It takes up all of them. If your viewport ever disappears, don't worry, they aren't gone, they're just hidden right now. So again, just the shortcut key is to just put your mouse over a viewport. Here, I'll bring a cube back so we have some reference here. There we go, our cube. I'm going to go ahead and save. Turn on headlight. Okay, save. Okay, so here we are. Again, just move your mouse over a viewport and hit F12. Full screen. Full screen. And just hit F12 again to make it small. So if you ever want to work on a detail in 3D, you full screen it so that way you have a better view. Oops, sorry about that. So there we go. That's again a little thing about viewports I forgot to mention, and it's also very important. Here's something I never really understood why this happens, but every once in a while you're working and you're not looking at your keyboard and your hands are moving around hitting shortcut keys, eventually you might accidentally hit a button that'll lock your viewport. This little letter up here that describes the viewport, as you see there's viewport A, B, C, and D. If this is colored like green like that, if you hit F12, oh, okay. If you hit F12, you'll notice, whoa, everything's gone. Why is that? And sometimes it won't even let you, like F12 just refuses to work. Like maybe if I mute it right now. Mute. So, anyway, if you ever see this where you see your viewports but there's nothing in them, it probably means, I don't know what button it is, but most often your thumb or something must have bumped the wrong button. All you have to do is just click on it. Click on the colored letter up there, and it'll change it back. I guess right-clicking mute means you can silence a window. I guess that's what it's called. And then solo means all of them are muted except for that one. So anyway, just left-clicking on it will solve that problem. That's an issue that may arise from just, negligence, just an accident. It's easy to fix. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so now we know how to create objects from scratch. We know how to look at them, and we know how to select different parts on them. Select them, select different parts, points, edges, and polygons. Again, the three major things when it comes to modeling. And again, spacebar is the quick shortcut key to get back to your just object selection. So now we're going to go into what's called transform. This is where actual modeling takes place. Obviously, if we wanted to make a boombox, as I was explaining, boomboxes aren't perfectly cubed like this. We need to make it longer. So transformation, or the transform module here, is going to be our main tool for that. There's three different ways you can transform something. There's S for scale, R for rotate, and T for transform. A lot of them, some of them are self-explanatory, some of them aren't. Scale means to scale the size. I explained before how we will never use the property editor to change the size of the object, except for maybe the first time you make it. This is why. If you want the cube to be bigger or smaller, you'll want to click here, S, for scale. The shortcut key is also S on your, well no it isn't, it's X on your keyboard. Hitting X on your keyboard will also, it's the shortcut key for scale. So if I have the cube selected and I hit X, it instantly goes onto the scale tool here. As we can see this blue, red, and yellow little cues here. Each of these cues represents an axis in 3D space. X for red for X, blue for Z, and green for Y. Their color coded is the same as down here, as the little X, Y, and Z diagram at the bottom left. It's sort of like a compass in a way. So yeah, these are color coded to match, and if you just click and drag, it gets bigger and smaller. And whenever you transform something, it always has a reference. It always has a point of reference. Right now, down here, we see COG is highlighted. COG means center of geometry. What that means is it's the very center of the object. So when I expand it, it grows according to where it grows bigger and smaller from the center of the object. Let me show you how it could be different. If I go ahead and I move my cube, oh wait, no, I won't go into that yet. Scale, whoa, didn't really do that. Okay, so yeah, scale is X. Now that grows it, that makes it grow in all 3 dimensions at the same time. It's growing in width, it's growing in height, and it's growing in depth. X, Y, and Z, they're all growing at the same time. If you want to make it long, like let's say for our boombox example, we would only choose, you can highlight each one. You'll see how they highlight when you move your mouse over them. Let's make this cube longer than it is taller or wider or depth. So anyway, we'll choose X. Just click and drag. So now you'll notice it only grows in that one direction. I can do the same with Z. And same with Y. There we go. Nice. So that's scaling. I'm going to set it back to its normal size. And again, we kind of want this as a boombox, just as an example here. I'm going to scale it out a little bit. There we go. It's nice and long. So that's scaling. If you want, you can also, these X, Y, and Z here on the left, you can click one individually. So that way, you can, if I only want to grow it in X, I can click X here, so that way only the X color is highlighted, so that way no matter where I click, only X will be affected. Y and Z are locked, I cannot manipulate them, only X. Same thing with Y and Z, you can do it, and also if you hold down Control, you can select multiples, so that way X and Z get manipulated, but Y is locked. So anyway, there's lots of different uses for that. And also you can manually enter how much you want. So let's say I want Y and Z to be 1. I don't want those to be grown at all. So I'll set them all back to 1. That sets it back to its original shape. If you want, oh, and also this button down here, that selects all X, Y, and Z at the same time. So if I have only one selected and I want all 3 of them selected, instead of doing it by hand, I can just click this button and it selects all of them. It unlocks them. So anyway, as I was saying, let's say I want X, I want the cube to be twice as long as it is everything else. So I hit 2. Boom. So now it's twice as long. But I think it needs to be a little bit longer. So then I can fine tune it with this. Alright, so there we are, that's scaling. Next is rotation. You can either hit R, or the shortcut is C. If I have the object selected, I hit C, and the rotation menu comes up. Again, we see a new helper tool here. It looks like a sphere. And again, it's color-coded. Red, blue, and green. Again, each color stands for an axis. So I can click on one. I'll click on this blue one here. And I can rotate it along that direction, the Z-axis. If I do it with the red, it rolls. And if I do green, it pivots. So you may have heard about this if you know anything about flying planes. It's called pitch, yaw, and roll, I think. I think pitch is this. Like, imagine this being an airplane. The pitch of an airplane is like how steep it's going up, going down, or maintaining altitude. Yaw, Y-A-W, is its turning, its position, or, you know, in relative to where it's moving. So that's the turn of the plane if it's turning. And then roll, think of it as do a barrel roll, you know, whoosh, there you go, how it rolls over. You know, the angle it tilts at, that's the airplane rolling. So you can kind of think of it like that. Again, X, Y, and Z, pitch, yaw, and roll. So that's sort of how rotation works. Again, if you don't want to click on either of these, you can just either click in the center or click out here in the distance, and you can roll it in all the different directions at once. Imagine this is sort of like manipulating an object in Gary's mod when you have it with the fizz gun. That's kind of what that's like. So, but if you want to have more control, you want to use the axes here. So anyway, there we go. Woo, we can rotate our object around. And also you can set it up by typing in numbers here if you want to do exact. Again, rotation works with degrees. So if I want to make it like Y, let's say I'm going to work with the turn here, the Y axis. If I want the cube to, let's say, be 90 degrees, if I type in 90, boom, that's 90 degrees. That's a right angle right there. Here, for just an example here, I'm going to select, I'm going to hit U to select polygons, and I'm going to I'm going to use X to scale, because again, you can scale different things. You can scale and rotate not only whole objects at a time, but if you have polygons selected, you can scale them individually. Like right now I have this polygon selected, and I have the scale tool, so now I can shrink that. And only that polygon will change sizes, nothing else. Same thing with rotate. I can hit C, and I can rotate that. But as you see, it's okay. This is a good example of reference of where, or I guess how transformation needs to have a reference area. For some reason, when I did rotate, the COG here disabled itself. Right now it's at object. So right now, when I rotate this object, it's going to rotate relative to the center of the object. Whoa, you know, maybe that's not what I want. I don't want that. Maybe it is what I want. But anyway, right now I don't want that. If I hit COG, center of geometry, now it'll rotate around the center of the polygon itself, not the center of the object. If I deselect center of geometry, there we go. So it all really depends on how you want to manipulate things. Object and COG. If something isn't... Get out of here. Okay, so anyway, if something isn't rotating the way you want it to, most often than not, you're going to want to make sure that COG is turned on. There you go. Also, something else down here that you may have noticed is this sim, that stands for symmetry. Often than not, when you want to try and use the camera angle to like look around, for some reason Softimage, it's kind of glitchy and it doesn't exactly recognize that you want to use the camera. So what it'll do is when you hit S, it'll sometimes accidentally activate symmetry. So if I do something like this, well, no, I guess it's not a good example. Here, I'll select a point, and I'll move the point over. Oh, that's not good either. Okay, for some reason, this isn't giving me... Basically, what symmetry does is... I can't seem to replicate it right now, but anyway, if symmetry is activated, if you do something on the left side of the object, that object, or whatever you're doing on the left side, will be replicated on the right side. So what I expected to happen was if I moved this point around, if I moved this point up, that this point here, the symmetrical point on the other side, would move up as well. Well, that would make a mess, and sometimes you'll notice that your polygon meshes, or that your model is being screwed up and you don't know why. Again, if that ever starts happening, check to make sure that your symmetry button isn't on. Symmetry is important for some cases, but I find it causes more pain than it should. So anyway, just click on that to make sure it turns off. Anyway, now that we've gone over that, you may have noticed I was sliding things around. That is the last transformation, called translation. Translation, it's not what it sounds like. It doesn't mean like translating from one language to another. Translate means that you keep the size, you keep the rotation. All you do is you slide around. So there we go. Like here, I'll choose my object. Oh, as I was never mind. I'm gonna go back to rotation here really quick. Sorry. I was explaining how you can enter things in manually and how rotation works in degrees. So if you hold down, or if I type in 90 in Y, it'll rotate it 90 degrees on the Y-axis, which is this, the green one. If I type in 180, which is means to turn around, there, now it's facing the other direction. So 0 is facing normal, and 180 should spin it around so it faces backwards. And 360 is a complete circle, so it ends up right back where it was. You may notice that if you ever rotate it by hand, you can notice the numbers change. So you'll notice it gets closer and closer to 360 as I turn it, but then as soon as I get to right back where I was, it snaps back. Oh, no it didn't. Yeah, sometimes it does that. Oh yeah, I'm just counter-proving myself all over the place here. Anyway, I just know in some cases it doesn't accept anything higher than 360. But in some cases I like this one and I see it does. Anyway, there you go. If you ever want to enter in things manually, work in degrees. Okay, we're getting near the end of the we're getting near the end of the tutorial here, or the class, I believe. So I'll just move on to the last transformation, and one of the most important is translate. As I was saying, it doesn't have to do with a language, not like translating languages. What translate does is it moves an object around in the 3D space. You just click and you drag, and you can move the whole thing around. You aren't changing its size, you aren't rotating it. So it's maintaining its size, it's maintaining its orientation in 3D space, you're just rechanging its location. And this is good, so you can choose different points. So I'll choose... Okay, let me return this polygon back to its... whoa. I don't want rotate, I want scale. Holy crap, what happened? Set that back to 0. Oh, it's horrible. It's broken. Okay. Oop, set that back. Okay, there we go. So I want this polygon set back to the way it was. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it here. There we go. One moment, getting a drink. Okay, so transform. Transforming is the best way to manipulate things the way you want. I can hit T, which is the shortcut key for selecting points, and I'll select different points, and then I can hit V, which is the shortcut key for translate. So now I can grab that point, and now I can drag it and manipulate it around. And you can see the edges change, because this point is connected to these 3 other points, that one, and that one, and that one, by edges. So as this point moves around, the edges stay connected to it, and the polygons change their shapes. So there we go. So that's basically the main technique for modeling. Again, you can highlight the different axes. So if I only want to slide this along the x-axis, I can do that. If I only want to move it around the z-axis, there we go. And if I only want to change its altitude, height, I can do that. So anyway, there we go. That's the and again, you can also change it specifically. You can see right here on the grid, these little squares. Each square here is a unit. So right now, this it says 4 here. So anyway, if I want to move, jeez, get out of here. Like I said, Softimage is a little buggy sometimes. So anyway. Like I hold down S and I right click to rotate, but for some reason S isn't always recognized. So even though I hold S and I right click, it doesn't recognize me holding down the S button, and it just right clicks instead. That's something you're going to have to just get used to. If it doesn't work, just start spamming the S button until it works for you. It's unfortunate, but something that you just have to deal with, I'm afraid. So anyway, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so you can manually enter in, like right now, I have this point selected, and I hit V to translate, right now its X value is 4. So if I want to move it 2 units, oops, sorry. If I want to move it 2 units, I change 4 to 6. Boom, now it moves 2 units in the X direction. I can change it back to 4, I can do 2. So again, that's sort of for like if you want to have very exact measurements. But for most of video game modeling, you don't need to do that. This isn't like, we aren't making architectural plans for buildings, we aren't designing a gear, a cog for an engine or something. It doesn't need to be super exact. It just needs to look good. So you'll hardly ever need to manually put in numbers, but that's how it works. Scale, yeah, rotation works in degrees, and translation works in units. If you ever want to move it in, if you ever want to type it in manually. And scale, I think, just works with modifying the size of the scale. So, anyway, again, just a brief overview. The 3 transformations are scaling, rotating. Yeah, let me just scaling, bigger, smaller, rotating, self-explanatory, and translating, which means to move around. There we go. And with that, I can just conclude this lesson with some really quick, I guess really basic advice on how to get started modeling. You'll first start off by getting a primitive that is close to what you want. And after that, you're going to start you're going to modify it, you know, by scaling it. Oh, another thing you can do, just showing like translating. Translation also works for different things, like if I want to select an edge and I hit V to translate, I can move it like that. So I can move entire edges and stuff. Same thing goes with polygons. I can select a polygon and move an entire polygon around. So, as I was saying, after you created it and you've tweaked the shape to the exact size that you want, or into the general shape, then you can start adding new details. New details means more points and more edges. The more points and edges you have, which means the more polygons you're going to have. And the more polygons you have, the more detail you can have. So the very first and one of the most useful tools you can have is the add point and tool, or add point and edge tool. It is the backslash, I think that's what it's called. Backslash, it's underneath backspace. The backslash tool, or the key on your keyboard, you hit that, and your icon will change into this marker. You saw me using this earlier in the lesson. What you can do is you can add points to edges. So this edge here, I'm going to add a point here. I click, and now a new point has been added. It breaks that edge and puts a point there. And now what I can also do is I can create new edges. So now I have a new point, I can also add new edges. So I'll go to this edge, and I'll add a point over here. There you go. And then you right-click to finish. So if you're done editing, you right-click to stop. So there we go. We have some more detail. We have a new edge and some new points. Now I can hit T, select that point, and now using V to translate, I can now move it, and I can start adding new shapes to this. I can do the same over here. There we go. And let's say I want a little bit more detail. I can do this. I can not only click on edges to create new points, and you can connect them like that. You can connect 2 points to make an edge. I mean, the edge was already there, but it doesn't show it. Let me show you an example here of what that's useful for. I will make this point really, really high up. Now, this is a square right now. It has 4 edges. But the thing is, it's still going to be divided into triangles, because again, triangles are the smallest polygon that the computer can work with. It can be divided in 2 different ways and makes 2 entirely different shapes. If I split it that way, it makes that shape. It looks like a hill coming down, like a slope that comes down and then levels out. Or I can split it this way. I can split it long ways like that, and creates an entirely different shape. Now it creates more of like a pyramid shape. So anyway, as we can see, without it, if we don't split it ourselves, the computer will automatically split it in the way that it thinks is best. And now the computer doesn't always know best. So even though you have squares sometimes, like I say, I recommend always having triangles. So if you see a square on your model, it's good to go ahead and split it up yourself. So that way you have full control over it. Like let's say, like I said, if you don't want that look, if you want more of a pyramid, if you want a nice slope here, the computer automatically divides this square into 2 polygons that way. But we don't want it, so we use, again, the backslash tool to add a new point and edge, and we click on this point and that point, and it creates an edge between them. There we go, now we have the shape we want. And here's another thing, you don't have to click, this tool is really cool, you don't have to just click between, you don't have to just click on points and edges, you can also click in the middle of polygons, and you can start adding points in the middle of the polygon. So that's pretty neat, right? Just as long as it ends, as long as you end it on an edge or another polygon, or else you'll break it. So there we go. You know, that was a little too complex for what we're doing, so I'm just going to create one point in the middle. There we go. So now I have a point in the middle. So now I can grab that, and I can pull it out. I can move it in, give it like an indent there. Whoa, maybe not. Whoa, okay, that looks really weird. It's hard to tell what's going on. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a couple more, yikes. Yeah, I'm going to add a couple more lines here. There we go. There we go, so now we can create an indent. You know, do all sorts of things, make it go down and in. So you can add tons of different detail, bring it out like that. So again, the backslash tool is a very useful tool. I can click here, give it a new point, connect. Ooh, we have even more detail. So now that's sort of how you add detail to things. And now the next tool is to remove detail from things. If something's too complicated, you hold down, or you don't hold down, you just hit M. And you'll see 3 tools down here. This is sort of, it looks very similar to the translate. You just click and drag. But what you want to do here is this. You'll see 3 buttons down at the bottom. This one down here means translate, so you can click and drag and translate, and then this button here means merge. You click on that, and what will happen is when this button is on, you can drag one point on top of another, and what will happen is you'll see they'll snap together. So what happens is when you move it together and then you release, that point is now gone. That point merges with the other point. So I'll grab this point and I'll snap it back in with that one. I'll take this point and I'll snap it in over here. I'll take this point and I'll snap it in down here. There, now all that detail we just made is gone. So that's how you add detail and you remove detail. Add detail with the backslash tool, so that way you can add detail, creating more points and edges, so that way you have more control over your object, the shape of it. And again, M is to, and also again, not just M by itself, you have to make sure that this tool is turned on. That's a really quick way to merge points together, to get rid of detail. So those are your main modeling tools. You create detail, and then you manipulate the detail by either rotating or translating or scaling it. And now I'm going to show you a couple more tricks. Again, we were talking about making a sort of a boombox, in a sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the handles for the boombox to hold it. I'm going to do the create detail tool, and I'm going to create the base of the handles. There we go. Now I'm going to select this and I'm going to line it up so it's more of a square. Actually, no, I'm going to select this whole polygon. I'm going to scale it so it's smaller. Move it over here. There we go. And now what I'm going to do, so I'm going to add some more edges here. Just because, like I said, I don't like having a, it's not a good idea to have anything more complicated than a triangle when modeling. So there we go. There's our first handlebar. And now what I'm going to do is how do I make it up, like stand up, like come out of the object. If I try and translate it upwards, that doesn't look good. It drags everything up with it. What you do is when you have the polygon selected, you hit Control D. That stands for duplicate. I hit Control D, it doesn't look like anything happened. But what happens now is when I translate up, look at that, it comes straight out. If I hit Control D again, ooh, there we go, we get another one. It's sort of like creating a new level. So there we are. So I can stack them. So anyway, there we are. Enough of that. Back to where we were. A single polygon. I can do that. Works with any polygon. It's like if I wanted to do this here, or like let's say I wanted to make a face, an indent for the boombox. I'll hit Control D. After that's selected, and now boom, I can move it out. Not only that, but I can also move it in. And then I'll scale it down. There we go. So now we have an indented boombox face there. So again, Control D is to duplicate. It's a sort of a shortcut way to modeling some things. It isn't always needed, but you know it's pretty handy sometimes. And anyway, going back to making the handle, I'm going to go ahead and hit Control D. I'm going to raise this up. And now I'm going to select hit E for edge. I'm going to select this edge. I'm going to bring this edge up. I'm going to hit U to select polygons. And I hit Control D to duplicate again. And I'm going to bring it out this way. There we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start creating the other end of the polygon, or where the handle is going to meet. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create another square on the top here with the add tool, point and edges. So go ahead. It doesn't need. Again, I'm just kind of rushing this. You'll need to take your time and use different techniques to create better looking stuff. But anyway, Control D will raise this up. There we go. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete these two polygons. I need these to be empty, like be open like that, so that way I can join them well. Again, I'm just kind of lining these up. There we go. And I'm going to hit the M button. This way I can merge points together. And now I'm just going to start snapping the points to each other. There we go. It's kind of ugly, but there we go. Again, if I were to do this, if I were to make handles, you don't need to do it that way. You could also, here I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to delete all this. Grow selection. I'm going to delete our handlebars. Whoa, undo. There. Delete those polygons that made up the handle, and I'm going to stitch up the top again here. That was the complicated way to do things. An easier way to do it may have been primitive polygon mesh cube, and we'll just start another one. And I'll scale it. I'll bring it up. Well, first I'll translate it, bring it up, so that way it's on line with the top of the boombox. And then I'll scale it so it's the right size. There we go. And then I'll move it over to the side. I'll select the top of it, the top polygon, and I'll translate it down. There you go. And I'll select it, and I'll hit, with the whole object selected, I'll hit Control D, which duplicates the entire object, and then I can just slide it over. I'll hit Control D again. Oh, looks like it slid it over for us. There we go. Line that up, and then again, just kind of, we'll rescale it, make it shorter. Slide it up, select this polygon here, translate it out, and there we go. So that's another way to make a handle that looks a little bit more uniform. And so yeah, there's lots of different ways you can model. Again, modeling isn't really something I can, it's kind of hard to teach because really you have to play with it and learn what style you like to work with and come up with your own techniques. There's lots of tutorials online that'll teach you really nice techniques. But add detail and remove detail are the basic ones. Control D to duplicate is a kind of a neat way to manipulate sides. Looks like QMath asked how to activate snap to grid. Again, snapping to grid isn't really something you should need to do for modeling for games, because if you're snapping to grid, maybe you should be making your model in Hammer. You know, you shouldn't be making a model, you should be working in Hammer. But if you really want to snap to grid, here I have to, you can right click on these modules to collapse them. I need to do that since my laptop resolution isn't that great. So if you want to see these things down here, constraints. Snap down here is underneath transform. Just turn that on. And now you see here this picture of a grid. They're snapped to reference plane. That's a grid. So now if I grab this point here and I move it around, it's going to snap to the grid. It snaps directly, as you can see. It snaps. It moves 1 unit at a time. Whoops. Dun, 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 dun. It doesn't. It snaps 1 unit up every time. Another way you can do it is if you turn it off, you can hold down Control. Like let's say I'm moving it around. If I hold down Control, it'll snap. And then when I let go of Control, it'll stop snapping and it'll move freely again. Okay, so anyway, let's get that back to the way it was. There's one last, I guess, technique I want to talk about. Is called subdividing. If I select 2 edges, oh here, one moment. Let me go ahead and get rid of this so I can demonstrate. If I want to add more detail to this object long ways, like again on the U or V axis, longitude, latitude, what I'll do is I'll select every edge that goes around on these 4 corners and I'll hit Shift D. And what it'll do is it'll split those edges up evenly. And I can increase the power. There you go. So Shift D is a good one for if you want to create a point right in the middle of something. Like let's say if I want to do the Add Point tool, but I want the point to be exactly in the middle of this line, and I don't want to have to eyeball it. Like, is that in the middle? I can't tell, you know. If you want it to be exactly in the middle, select that edge and hit Shift D. And boop, there. It'll automatically put a dot. It'll split the line in half. If you want it split into, whoops, one moment. There you go. If you want it split into thirds, you turn it up. And then fourths, fifths, and the more you turn it up, the more it splits it, and it'll split it evenly. So again, Shift D is not super important, but it's a good way for splitting things down the middle or dividing objects up into even amounts. So yeah, anyway, I think those were the 4 main modification techniques I wanted to teach you. Again, those were kind of more advanced. They weren't exactly necessary. Again, just go online. Softimage is a widely used program, both professionally and by hobbyists. So a lot of people use it, and there's a lot of documentation on how to use it. So yeah, again, Softimage docs, or Source SDK docs, has their own. Here, I'll create it. One moment, I'll show you how to get there. So there we are. Bring up Source SDK docs. Underneath modeling package help, Softimage XSI. And here you are. This is really good. You go down, and at the very bottom, see also XSI tutorials. And here you go. You have a couple of tutorials to get you started. They have things like, you know, XSI beginner tutorial, texturing, animation, rigging, lots of things. How to export into the source engine. I'll try to cover a lot of this stuff eventually, but if you can't wait and you want more, I guess, a more organized look at it, and you know, if you prefer to learn things through reading, then this is a good place to go. Again, also just Google searches. Just Google search XSI tutorials. You'll find lots of useful, things online. It's super. Like I said, just take a little bit of effort. Just Google it, and you're good to go. Yeah. So with that, we don't really have much right now. That is it. I think I covered everything in my notes. The class went on for a little over an hour and a half. So it wasn't too long, I don't believe. Again, you don't have anything, you won't be able to see your work in the source engine yet, but next week we will try and cover that. In the meantime, you know, just get your hands dirty. Get in there, start modeling. Let me put the title back up here. Wait, no, not that. There we go. Ta-da. Okay, so get your hands dirty. Just get in there. Review this tutorial on YouTube. I'll try and time mark it or timestamp it, so that way you can go back and review the more complicated things that you may not have grasped the first time around. And just follow along. Again, don't try and make anything super pretty. It took me a long time to start creating organic objects like faces and trees and flowers, stuff like that. Things that have lots of curves to them. That's another tutorial in its own right. But for right now, just try to model things that are simple, things that are man-made or have very sharp corners. Like just model a chair, model a table, model a pipe. Because aside from cubes, you can also get cylinders, spheres, stuff like that. So just experiment around. Like I said, just kind of get your hands dirty, look up tutorials. That was the very basics of 3D modeling. I hope you understand how 3D modeling works, the concepts of it. You can find your way around the Softimage pretty well. Oops, sorry, turn that off. So anyway, so yeah, you know your way around a Softimage pretty well. You know how to change the viewports. You know how to move around with the camera. You know how to focus on objects. Again, when it's highlighted, hit F to frame it. You know how to select objects. You know how to select points, edges, and polygons. You know what those are. You know how to navigate around 3D space using X, Y, and Z as your compass. And yeah, with that, basically just go for it. Like I said, just make simple shapes. Like I said, tables, chairs, cups, whatever. Light switches. Just do whatever you want to make for your map. Think of something that you might want to put in your map, and we'll work on modeling it. And so yeah, that's it. I'll try and post some links to the download site for Softimage in case you don't have it yet, and maybe I'll try and do a couple searches for some Softimage tutorials myself that I like, and I'll provide some links to those too. All right, so without further ado, I guess that was it. Thanks for joining. If you have any questions, again, just private message me. I'm on Steam under Surge. You can type in my username is CyberSticky, so if you're searching for me, just add CyberSticky as your friend, and I will add you. And again, just private message me if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to help out with anything you may have problems with. And that's it. So yeah, again, modeling. That is the... Yes! Awesome. Good job. You know how to model now. It's one of the last steps of really being able to customize maps. I mean, mapping is good, but when you can 3D model, you can really personalize your maps to a whole nother degree. You can start making your own weapons, for like TF2. When we get into animation, you can start making NPC, like you can make new character models, new player models, everything. 3D modeling really has tons of potential. There's so many things you can do with it. But yeah, anyway, we're just scratching the surface here. Don't feel bad if your models don't look that good. It takes lots of practice. I've been doing it since 2005, and I still have a lot to go. I still have a lot to learn. But again, just as with everything, just practice, practice, practice. Yes, texturing will be done in the next episode, our next lesson. And ragdolls, I haven't actually made a ragdoll myself, but I do believe I understand the basis of it. So ragdolls has to do with creating skeletons for your models, so that way that you can animate them. So once we start getting into animation, animation can be used to create ragdolls. Yes. So Ooh, sorry. Okay. So anyway, yeah, that concludes it. Very exciting. We got through it all right. Got through it pretty well, I think. So again, we've reached about the 2-hour mark since I started recording, and I know Saber Lily wants to get out of here and go buy some clay so she can work on some art projects. So I will not hold us up any further. Thanks for joining. I will stick around for like maybe 5 minutes or so just to answer any urgent questions that there may be. But in the meantime, I will catch you later. Thanks for watching.